Hey there everybody, what's going on? This is TwoHeadedFlounder. Welcome back to another post-rotation deck profile. Today we're going to be looking at Zoroark, Lycanroc, Zoroark. This was also requested by Gaming Hunter492. He requested also the Zoroark deck list, so pair of Zoroark decks. So here we are. Lycanroc-GX is a really cool GX Pokemon. It is very strong, not only in its GX attack, but its ability. Has the ability Bloodthirsty Eyes. Essentially, when you evolve a Rockruff by playing Lycanroc-GX from your hand to evolve it, you have the Lysander effect, which is bring up one of your opponent's bench Pokemon to the active spot, which is obviously a great ability to have because we don't have to Guzma for the turn, which means we can play Cynthia or Malo, Acerola, whatever it may be that we need to play for the turn. We will be able to play it. So, Lycanroc is just super, super solid. Claw Slash, this is kind of like looking at evolution, honestly, like maybe like a fighting type evolution. It's just one of those generic attacks that we have on a lot of EV cards where it's a colored energy, a double colorless. So for a fighting double colorless, we'll do 110 damage. It's not the worst damage, it could definitely be better, but what we can definitely do with this card is one-shot a Zoroark-GX, barring that we are hitting for super effective damage. So Claw Slash is okay. And next up we have Dangerous Rogue GX, which does 50 damage times the amount of bench Pokemon your opponent has in play. So if they are going to load up their bench entirely, you're going to be doing 250 damage. That's a guaranteed knockout on everything. So that's honestly really good. So this gives a lot of decks favorable matchups over a lot of other decks, such as Gardevoir. Gardevoir is one of those decks that needs a full bench because they need multiple Gardevoirs in play, and they need some kind of draw. So they're going to load up their bench with whether it be Glades or Octillery or Gardevoirs or a Lele. They're going to usually have a full bench, which means we have a guaranteed knockout on a full HP Gardevoir at some point in the game. So this really swings favorable matchups, and this card is just super good in general. So, before we get into the rest of the list, I do want to mention that we are at a 61 list. The extra card here is Diancie Prism. I threw it in here because there is a possibility of using it. It's not exactly in my deck list, but we will be talking about it. So, of course, we're playing Rockruff because we're playing Lycanroc. So, we have a single copy of the Corner Rockruff because this is at 60 HP. We prefer the 70 HP one, but the thing is, this is really good for stalling if we need to. So what Corner does is for a fighting energy, we'll be able to trap the opponent's active Pokemon into place. They cannot retreat it. Now, assuming they don't have Guzma or Acerola or Tate and Liza, they're stuck there. So what we're going to want to do is, I guess, Guzma up something or Bloodthirsty Eyes up something that has no energy attached to it, has a pretty hefty retreat cost, and just lock it there. So, ideally, probably like an Oranguru, and just leave it there, you know? So, that's what it's here for. Wild Kick could potentially do something. Double colorless, flip a coin, if tails does nothing, but it could hit for 6 damage on a Hoopa, which might be relevant. And of course, we're playing 2 copies of this surprise attack, 70 HP Rockruff. We're playing this one, of course, 2 of because it has 70 HP, which is a better HP to be at. But also, surprise attack, again, like Wild Kick, could be an effective move to use and dealing with safeguard Pokemon. So on to the rest of the deck. Obviously, the other main guy here is Zoroark. The full bench, we're going to be doing 120, Choice Band 150. It's just really solid, so Riotous Speeding is a fantastic attack to have. Trade is going to literally be how we draw into cards. It means we can play lower supporter counts, lower like item accounts that would essentially draw us cards. So overall, Zoroark is super solid. Gets pretty much a 2-hit knockout on literally everything in the format, especially the Choice Band. So it is a super solid card. And of course, we're playing for the Zorua Just worth mentioning that Ram for 20 damage for double colorless is damage against Hoopa and Alola Ninetales. Speaking of those cards, we have Oranguru, who is also an attacker that can deal with those guys. Profound Knowledge will do 60 damage while also confusing him. It's a clean 2-shot on them, and it does give him a status, so there's a 50-50 shot that they won't be able to attack us, and also they can't one-shot us anyways. But why we're playing this is for the resource management attack. Put 3 cards from your discard pile on the bottom of your deck in any order. Now, we're not going to be playing anything that lets us get cards from the bottom of the deck. Not that big of a deal. We're going to be using this to get double colorless energy back. Once it's enhanced hammered, there's not really any way besides resource management or GX attack that will allow us to get those back. So we kind of need something. And for a single energy, we can go ahead and do so. And that's just really honestly very useful. Also, we can get back powerful supporters like Acerola or Cynthia. So resource management is just a fantastic attack. And I would honestly recommend using it in most Zoroark decks because we do technically mill ourselves by using trade. Another way to counteract Safeguard is Buzzwole, Baby Buzzwole. Sledgehammer attack will do 30 plus 90 if our opponents have exactly 4 cards, prize cards remaining, which means they get a knockout on an EX or GX, or if they take 2 non-EX GX knockouts, which is fine. We're going to end up losing Pokemon regardless. It's Pokemon, that's how the game works, but we get to punish our opponent for taking it, and because the 130 HP is such an odd number to hit, it's actually very difficult to get a one-shot knockout without super effective damage on Buzzwole. So that's honestly super good, because that means we can hit for 120, we can then Acerola and hit for another 120, and still just have the same amount of HP, and not to mention we can either get 120 damage on 2 separate Pokemon, take a clean knockout on something, and maybe continue to do some more with it. Card is super awesome. Swing Around really isn't worth mentioning, but there will definitely be a game where you have to go all in and attach energy to Buzzwole because it's your only option. So does 80 damage plus 20 more for each heads you flip, which you get to flip 2 coins for. So there is potential there, and there really isn't at the same time. It's not that great of an attack, but if you have to use it, you have to use it. And lastly, for our main attacking Pokemon, we have Buzzwole-GX, which of course is here to snipe. He's a great opener. We're not playing Tapu Koko in the deck, so Buzzwole is pretty solid. Now, if you do decide to put Diancie in the deck, essentially Jet Punch can go up to 50 and 80 with Choice Band. If you really wanted to do something, you could also add a Beast Energy. It's not the worst idea in the world because we are playing 2 Ultra Beasts. However, we are only playing 2 Ultra Beasts. If you wanted to maybe up the count on Baby Buzz or Buzzwole-GX and play around with some other stuff, be my guest. But in this version, we're maximizing on about 60 damage, and that's not including, obviously, the Diancie, which would bring it up to 80. Really what we're doing here is playing this to do some early game shenanigans. Also, we play 2 Acerola, so getting out of play is easily done. But, for example, if we're going against another Zoroark deck, we can knock out a Zorua and apply 30 damage to another one, or something else that maybe we want to hit down the road for a knockout. So, for example, they Lele, we knock out a Zorua, we ping down the Lele for 30. Later on in the game with a Choice Band and Zoroark, we can hit it for a one-hit knockout. So there is a few series of plays like that that I do really like, including a copy of Buzzwole 4. Knuckle Impact is just not one of those attacks you ever want to be using. Again, you might have to. There's definitely games where you can't control what happens, so 160 is not bad. 190 with a Choice Band, you could knock out other Buzzwoles or Lapras, something along those lines. And Absorption GX is something we're never going to use because we always want to use Lycanroc-GX's attack because it's super good. So that's my take on Buzzwole, and that's why it's included here. So 2 copies of Lele because Wonder Tag is such an amazing ability. I had 3 in here originally, but I figured 2 Acerola was probably a little bit better just for getting things out of play. I know we have Palpad and no Ringuru, but I really would like a better chance of pulling an Acerola earlier than having to dig for it. So Wonder Tag is obviously very great for grabbing supporters when we need them, but also Energy Drive is just a good attack to use for a backup attacker. It can do some serious damage sometimes, and it's just worth having a copy of. So what Diancie Prism does, obviously, is all of your fighting Pokemon will do 20 more damage. And obviously that's just great. We're never going to use Diamond Rain, we're just going to plop this onto the bench, and it does help with damage outputs. So it turns Claw Slash from 110 to 130 attack. Essentially this is 50, and also this is essentially 50, but with, you know, things into consideration, it could be 140. And 140 with a Choice Band is 170, which means it's a clean knockout on a lot of lower HP GX Pokemon, such as Lele, which people play. So there is something to be mentioned for playing a copy of Diancie. I'm just not too big of a fan of it because the majority of the deck is Lycanroc and Zoroark, and they pretty much two-shot everything anyways, so that's fine. So on to our item cards. We're playing 2 copies of Enhanced Hammer because it's super good. There's no way besides GX attacks or resource management to get the special energy back. Therefore, Enhanced Hammer is great. So playing 2 copies of it just to remove and annoy our opponents. If they're not playing anything to recycle, then they're out 2 special energy. That's great. Playing 2 copies of Field Blower. I don't know what tools or what stadiums are going to be good after post rotation. It's all to be seen, but removing choice bands is always a good thing, and removing annoying stadiums is always a good thing as well. So if we can stop our opponent from really just benefiting from their own stuff, I'm going to enjoy that very much so. 2 copies of Multi-Switch. So Multi-Switch is always like an instant include in Zoroark or Lycanroc, just because there's a few plays you can get to do and just go all in. I really like this card though. I feel like in every deck that has the weird energy attack cost of a colored energy and double colorless, this is such a great instant include, and I've been including it in a lot of my decks, and I'm not very disappointed with it. And playing 2 seems to be very nice, and there's room for it, so here it is. Playing a copy of Palpad because grabbing any 2 supporters we want from our discard pile, shuffling back into the deck is always great. We could reuse Malo, but mainly it's here to reuse Guzma, Cynthia, Acerola, maybe Tate and Liza. We have a copy of Rescue Stretcher because recycling and grabbing Pokemon that we may need to use again is always very important, so of course we're going to be playing a copy of it. 4 Ultra Ball because it's the best Pokemon search that we have in the game. And lastly, for items, we are playing 3 copies of Choice Band because damage output is still very necessary, and we want to do the maximum amount that we can, so of course we're playing Choice Band. Playing 2 copies of Brooklet Hill because, of course, we have no Bridget. Brooklet Hill's obviously really good. Maybe 3 is a better option, but I'm going with 2 because I like my odds with 2. So that's just preference here. We get to either search out a basic fighting or basic water. We're obviously only playing basic fighting, so we get to grab our Rock Ruffs and our Buzzwoles. So it's always good, and it kind of in conjunction with Pokemon Fan Club is kind of like us using a Bridget, which is very nice. Onto our supporters. We're playing 2 copies of Acerola. I originally had it at 1, but I really like the 2, so just annoying our opponents, scooping up our Pokemon before they get knocked out, just really doing really crazy stuff like that can definitely swing games in our favor. So 2 copies of Acerola. It's because it's really good with Zoroark too. 4 copies of Cynthia because it's our best draw support. We're not playing Copycat, we're not playing Judge, we're not messing around here. We're going all in on Cynthia. So of course we're going to be playing the 4 copies. Only 2 copies of Guzma, but we are playing a 3/3 line of Lycanroc, so if we really need that Lysander effect, we have those guys. Guzma, of course, can be very useful, so we still include it into the deck. but 2 should relatively be enough, especially with resource management and pal pad. Next up, we have 2 copies of Lily. Just turn 1 Lily in general is a fantastic thing to have. Just being able to play our hand down super low and draw up until 8 cards is great, and it sets us up for a nice turn 2. Unless our opponent wants to judge us, which I don't think they usually want to do turn 1 because they also want to set up. We're usually in a good boat. You know, we draw, we have 9 cards in our hand, really solid. So of course we're playing 2 copies of that. It's also not that bad of a supporter later on in the game. A single copy of Malo, because being able to search any 2 cards out, put them on top of the deck, and then trade right into them is great. This opens up a lot of possibilities. We can grab 2 Enhanced Hammer, remove all special energy from the board. We could grab multi-switch and an energy. We can grab the Choice Band if we need it. We can grab a card, a Pokemon, maybe grab Lycanroc, and then also a supporter for the next turn. There's a lot of potential there, and it's super good. Playing Pokemon Fan Club because it's worth the inclusion, especially when we have Brooklyn Hills. So essentially a makeshift Bridget. Obviously it's not as good as Bridget, only grabbing 2 basic Pokemon, but we do get to put them into our hands, so we could then open up into possibilities of grabbing a Lele in a basic, and then being able to Lele and grab a support for the next turn. Lastly, for our supporters, we're playing 2 copies of Tate and Liza. I just like this card a lot. I really do. I think people overlook it, don't give it as much credit as it really needs. We don't have too much positive draw support, and a Shauna effect right now really isn't too bad. Also, the versatility of being able to choose between that and the switch effect is fantastic. Our retreat cost in the deck, barring Lele and our basics that evolve into our guys, is very high. There's a 2 retreat cost on just about all of our Pokemon. So having the switch is very useful, especially when it's reusable via pal pad. And lastly, onto our energy, we are playing 4 colorless, double colorless energy because of course we need to. We need to max out on that because Zoroark and Lycanroc both very much so need it. And 6 copies of fighting energy. It's a good amount of energy to have. I like having the 10 energy in our decks, especially with the multi-switch. So that's my list. Again, if you really wanted to, you could drop something in the deck. Maybe you don't like the 2 of multi-switch. Maybe you don't like the 2 of Acerola. Whatever it may be, there's definitely room for Diancie. The things that I don't like about it, though, is it does take up a bench spot. And it's not really too useful outside of the buzzes, being able to get the extra attack power off of it. So that's my list. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, you could definitely feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe to the channel, so that way you can stay up to date with my future content. We will be getting battles with these deck profiles soon. I want to wait until post-rotation, though, because I'm not really having too much with the current format. I just want the format to end. It's not like I need to practice to go to Worlds or anything, so just once the new format begins, expect to see a whole lot of videos with these decks. If anybody wants to see a particular deck, let me know in the comment section. Until then, though, I will see you all next time.